Good evening, friends. Oh, welcome to Beyond the Pain live video. This first Tuesday of this fifth month of May. Wow, the year is really galloping, and behold, we are here already at the beginning of the fifth month. It's amazing how time has flown. And I think I just want to start the evening with gratitude, a heart overflowing with gratitude for the blessings that we have received in 2026 so far. And there's so many reasons why we should be grateful. We are here, we're on this side. And those of you who follow me regularly know that um, April is a really important month for me. And I am so grateful to God for all that transpired in the month of April. I'm still in the glow of April and would really love to relive the moment and just savor April. And here we are. April has 30 days is gone, and now we are in May, and the year is running, and there is so much happening around us and the world around us today. And that is part of what I'm going to be sharing with us this month, how our environment impacts our emotional and mental well-being. And just before we started off our conversation this evening, I just want to take a moment to ensure that all our um, channels are live and yes, and we are ready to go on. See, okay, let's just do that quickly so that we we all our channels are working at the same time. I don't want to leave anyone behind, so let me just make sure that all the channels are working great. Welcome as you join me this evening. It's always a pleasure to be here. Let me know where you're joining from tonight. Yeah, let's know where you're joining us from this evening. I'm here in Geneva, Switzerland. The weather is doing us up and down. It's on a yo-yo, but in everything we give thanks to God. So tonight, like I mentioned, no sound. Okay, we need to find out what is going on there again. No sound on all right, just give me a moment to check what's happening on Instagram. I will be with you momentarily just to make sure that we have sound check. I'm just going to go check that and come back to you. All right, let's check what's happening with Instagram. Can you hear me on Instagram? Please indicate if you can hear me. Please indicate if you can hear me on Instagram. And also on the other channels, just put a message in the comment and let me know that you are hearing me. Just want to be sure that I'm audible in all the channels, all right, before we go on, so that you are not just watching my lips moving and without you hearing me. If you can hear me on Instagram, I'll be grateful if you could indicate so. All right, so let's go on. What do I mean by our environment impacts our emotional and mental well-being? This is actually going to be a two-part series. I'm going to start today talking about the environment in the home and how that impacts us, and right, whether as a child or as an adult, how that impacts us. And the last, okay, we're okay on Facebook. On Instagram, can you hear me? No sound. Okay, I'm going to have to start Instagram all over again. just to be sure. So if you're watching, just exit and come. I'm going to stop it and then I'm going to start again on Instagram again. All right. Sorry, friends on other channels. We just want to be sure that Instagram is working. Okay. All right. So we are back online again. Thank you very much. All right. Let's go on. Thank you, Lord. Great. So what surrounds us forms us. And there is also the hidden impact of what is happening around about us. In recent times, I was having a conversation with some friends. Great, you can hear me. Right, good. I was having a conversation with some friends, and she said to me that she is now living in a bubble. And I said, what do you mean by that? She said, my environment is so toxic. Every time I put on the telly, the things that I hear upsets me and triggers me. And then she moves to another, and some of the things that are going on around about her are triggering are emotionally and mentally. And therefore, she has decided that she was going off some spaces because of the way it was affecting her mentally and emotionally. And I felt that that was really good because she was aware of the impact of her environment on her. And she was taking decisions on what she was going to allow in her space and what she was not going to allow in her space. And for me, that was looking at it from the external, seeing how our external, the external environment can influence us, especially when it is very toxic. But the more I thought about it, the more it became even more important for us to pay attention to this. Because of the work that I do in trauma, I know how the impact of the home environment can impact a child, how the environment at home can impact a child that is growing up, both mentally and emotionally. And also because I work with people who are in toxic relationship, and I've had the opportunities to also work with their children as well. I have a real life experience of, how the environment where the children are growing up can impact them significantly. And so the first part of this is about the home environment and how this affects the children who are growing up and others who are also experiencing that space. When we talk about adverse childhood experiences, we are truly talking about what is happening in a place where they consider to be safe, where they should expect safety and security, and abuses, adverse experiences are happening in that space that they consider to be safe. And of course, what that immediately tells us is that parenting is not just in terms of what we are teaching our children, whether it is small children, whether it's biological children, whether it's adult children. We are training, we are teaching with our own lives. And a number of us also have imbibed and absorbed things from our environment, home environment, that is still having influence on us till today. That's why I do the work that I do, because most of the people that I see in my space have been impacted by something that happened in their past. I remembered working with a client a while ago who was in a toxic relationship that was impacting her teenage daughter. And, I do a lot of work around that area. And I sat with this teenage daughter, and she was telling me that if it was possible to actually change her name and, like really wanted to unadopt or I don't even know which name we want to put it, divorce our parents, if it was possible. And I mean, when I thought about it, I realized that the most powerful lessons that we are teaching in the homes, especially as parents, are things that we don't even say. We teach more by who we are, how we behave, how we comport ourselves than what we say. And the sobering truth, and this is something that we use a lot in my coaching environment, academic environment, where we always talk about encouraging people to show up for the training, for the enrichment classes. We always say that more is caught than taught. More is caught than taught. So our children, they catch more than what we are teaching with words. They catch more from our own behavior. They catch more from our comportment. They catch more from the things that we do than from the things that we say. This is really sobering for me. And honestly, I look back into my own life too. I've realized that there are some things, the intrusive thoughts that comes to me at times. I remembered one uncle of mine got really so angry with me when I was about 9 years old, and he used a word that I've never heard before at me, and I've never forgotten that word. But when he said it, it didn't. It looked like one word. It was later on in life when I grew up that I realized that what he called me was not actually a word, it was a statement. But he said it so fast that um, it sounded like one word to me. He said, "Damn you, wretched thing." Later on, I realized that he said, "Damn you, wretched thing." That was what he said to me. And that thing, I carried it for a long time. And I had to tell myself, I'm not a wretched thing. You understand what I mean? But can you just imagine the impact of one word and how far it can go? If I have not emotionally regulated, if I have not gotten to the place where I have also learned to forgive and leave the past behind me, I will still be harboring really toxic thoughts against this person that will be influencing me as well. And so, the power of the environment is very strong. The environment is powerful. And the environment in our home becomes the emotional language that children will learn to speak for the rest of their lives. What kind of language are you using in the home? What kind of words are we saying in the home? Because the truth of the matter is that children, they are emotional absorbers. They are not just observers. They are emotional observers. And you might ask me, oh, okay, why is this relevant for you as an adult? If you are not a parent, you're going to be a parent. If you are an adult who has absorbed stuff from your childhood, that you are wondering why you are doing something some way, why you are acting in a particular way, you might want to consider what you have absorbed from your childhood, because children's nervous system co-regulates with their caregivers. And so if you are a couple and you are in a home and the environment is toxic, you are calling each other names, your children are observing. You are using caustic words at each other. Your children are observing. I told a client of mine, you know, who was in a very toxic relationship, that something went wrong in your husband's background. And I want to have a conversation about that because the way he's behaving didn't just happen. Yes, we also have choices. We can say we have choices to make. But that comes when we learn how to regulate our emotions and know what to let go of. All right. Now, when we began to investigate further and further into this situation, we realized that this man, it was not a young man, it was in his mid-40s, was basically repeating everything he hated in his father. Can you even see the contradiction? Everything he hated in his father, the way his father treated his mother, and he fought and hated his father for that. Unfortunately, because he did not have an alternate way, what he had absorbed, he began to manifest as he grew, as he got into the relationship as well. He began to manifest the same thing, treating his own wife even worse than his father was treating his mother, because that was all he ever knew about the way a man treats a woman. And so these children internalize what they see. Children internalize what they see, not just what they are told. We cannot be in our homes and say, do as I say, and ask the child to ignore what you do. The child is observing and absorbing. Our children, they observe and they absorb. And so when they have chronically exposed to tension in the home, abusive environment, emotional inconsistency, it can wire their brains towards anxiety. They become either hypervigilant or they shut down. And when you look at this from the biblical lens, because that's what we do in this space, we look both with psychological and biblical lenses. I'm a faith-informed trauma transformation coach. You know, the Bible tells us that we should train up a child in the way the child should go. Training up a child is not by what we say alone. It is by what we model for that child, the behavior we model for that child. So train up a child in the way it should go. When he is old, he will not depart from it. Means that we need to model the truth, the principles that we are training them, we are teaching them. When you are training, if you go for it, if you're an intern, you're learning from the person that is your mentor. If you are a sportsman, you are learning from your coach. So training is not just instruction, it is modeling. So the question then follows is that what are we modeling for the children? But not just our children. I want to extend it even further. What are we modeling for those who are in our sphere of influence? Whether as a Christian man, a Christian woman, a Christian couple, what are we modeling for them? What are the youth around us? What are they seeing? What are they observing in our lives that can make and unmake how they, their faith, their emotional well-being, their mental well-being ultimately? I want to read a particular scripture again to emphasize this for us. And this is in Deuteronomy 6, verse 6 to 7. And it says, Deuteronomy 6, verse 6 to 7 says, and you commit yourself wholeheartedly to these commandments that I am giving you today. Repeat them again and again to your children. Talk about them at home, when you are on the road, when you are going to bed, when you are getting up. It means that we are living it out in every sphere. At home, on the way, everywhere, because children are observing. They are not only observing, they are also absorbing. And so when our children can witness how we operate under pressure, we're also teaching them how to operate, how to handle life's challenges. What is our first reaction when something really hard hits us? What do? They are observing. I watched a skit, not a skit, it's a video clip recently. It was this man who was having conversation with his son, his young son. And the way they were having this conversation, it was so interesting that you will actually think that this child is a is talking like an adult. He was talking baby language, but his language was so specific that you would think that he could actually understand exactly what the father is saying. And this was really so interesting for me because this boy was basically, you know, repeating with the father in his own language. He was modeling everything that the father was doing. He was doing that, and it became, of course, the video went viral. That is a perfect example of how the children are modeling and following after us. So, as children and those significant people who are still malleable around about us, they learn not just from what we believe, they learn how they live, even how we behave when our faith is tested. So, our faith is not performance. It's not meant to be a performance, it's meant to be lived out, to be seen, to be observed, to be absorbed. And all of this is affecting the environment around the home. So I've given two parts of it: the toxic environment, the faith environment. Either both of them are being absorbed by the impressionable individuals that are in that home with us, in that close environment. Like I mentioned at the beginning, this is a two-part series of how environment affects our emotional well-being and mental well-being. The first part, which is today, is to focus on the home, the close environment. The second part will focus on beyond the door, the environment outside, in the workplace, in the social environment, including social media. And we will do that on the last Tuesday of May, right? It will be announced. So, how do we gather emotional residue in the home? So that is the name I'm going to give to this thing that we absorbed: emotional residue. Emotional residue is that lingering emotional atmosphere that lives, that is left by unresolved stress, grief, conflict, unprocessed trauma, abusive environment in the home. Let me say that again. Emotional residue is the lingering emotional atmosphere that is left by unresolved stress, conflict, grieving, unprocessed trauma, abusive environment in the home or in an environment around about us that it deposits something in the inside of us. Whether we have been on the receiving end as a child or young adult growing up, or we are at the other part of it that we are the ones now giving it out. Either way, this is what we are carrying. In another way, we can also call it emotional baggage that we carried from childhood. So, because when you now carry it from childhood into adulthood, it becomes a baggage. That residue translates into a baggage that we're carrying around the place. And we all know how emotional baggages can slow us down, can limit us from showing up in the best version of us in our relationships and in other spheres of our lives. So, how does this emotional residue show up? The tension that is in silence. I mean, when there is heavy silence in the home, there has been a conflict and an argument. And then there is the silence that follows. The issue has not been resolved. but there is the tension that is almost palpable in the atmosphere. If you have been married for any length of time, you know exactly what I mean. And if you have passed through homes where conflicts are not well managed, you know what I mean. There is that thick silence that speaks volume. It also shows up as irritability or being emotionally unpredictable because the person has absorbed so much um, 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 residues from the environment that they get easily triggered and irritable. I mean, I was working with a teenager, and every time that she talks about the way her father speaks to her, she literally goes into a meltdown. Now, we can't even have a conversation. Everything becomes very aggressive. So this young lady has absorbed a lot of emotional aggravation from the father, from the parents' relationship, that now every conversation with her father leaves her agitated, even now as a young adult. Each time she needs to have a deep, deep conversation with her father, her heart rate goes up. It also it shows up in avoidance of difficult conversation, like the client I just mentioned. She just doesn't want to have any conversation with the father where she needs to express her own opinion or express something that she desires, especially when she knows that her father is going to be on the other side of the debate and it's going to degenerate. So she avoids difficult conversations. But if we don't have these difficult conversations, now we bottle up stuff in the inside of us that is now going to magnify the emotional baggage that we're going to carry. And, the person becomes hyper aware. There's this hyper vigilant. It's like walking on eggshells. You have to be careful how you are working with certain people in that home, what you're saying. These are all things that you know they linger, they leave residues in us that can linger into the future. They leave residues, and if we are the perpetrator who is creating this kind of environment in the home by our unresolved conflicts between couples, then we need to know how this impacts our children, impacts those who are living with us ultimately. If you have been on the receiving end, you know that you learn to read moods. You learn to read the environment very well before you say anything. And how can we can build a healthy relationship in that kind of environment when you have to work on eggshells, when you have to check, oh, is this person like this today? Is mother like this like tomorrow, or is uncle like this before you can speak? That builds up tension, internal tension. And then you begin to accept what you normally would not have accepted just to keep peace. Peace is not at any cost, because that's not the kind of peace that God is talking about. Not the one in which we see injustice and we keep quiet. That is not peace. All right. And we talked a lot about this when we were talking about acceptance. What is peace and what is not? Peace is not keeping quiet in the face of something that is wrong. Peace is not keeping quiet in the face of something that is deeply hurting you and you're unable to verbalize it, whether a husband or a wife or a child. So it's important that we have an environment in our homes that allows all the active players in our home to be able to be themselves, not to allow the atmosphere to shape them into a normal that is not normal, so that they don't leave that home thinking that that is the way people behave. When have a disagreement, we scream at each other, and then we don't talk to each other for the next 10 days. Or we divide the house into two, and one group stays at one side, one group stays at another time. That kind of situation is toxic for any child that is growing in that home. The emphasis of this message today is for us to be mindful of the environment that we are creating in our home, in our homes, and the impact that it has on the mental and emotional well-being of all the people in that home. Children, young adults, and even the adults that are there. Because psychologically, what ends up happening is that we have a situation of internal confusion where the person doesn't even know what to do, when to do. When is it safe for me to speak? When is it safe for me to laugh? When is it safe for me to crack a joke? When is it safe for me to actually, express my ideas and express my opinion? You have to read the atmosphere at all times, and that in itself can lead to, the kind of attachment pattern that can follow people all through their lives. I've either been anxious or been avoidant or been disorganized. And when you have an unhealthy attachment pattern, and this shows up in the future relationship, the kind of people that such individuals who have grown up in that kind of toxic environment, the kind of people they attract into their lives because of what they are looking for, what they have missed out in the homes that they are now looking for. It shapes the identity and sense of self-worth. When I'm working with young adults who are growing in a home that has been toxic, who are growing in with parents' relationship that has been full of conflicts and toxicity, one of the things that comes out is that they feel eroded of self-worth. They feel eroded of confidence, of identity. And the work that I need to do with them, that includes having to help them to understand their identity as defined by the God who created them, not by the environment in which they have grown up. When it is playing out in front of you like this, it runs deep. When a young adult who has the potential to be the best of them spent days struggling emotionally and not even having a space to express the internal conflict that they are dealing with as a result of what they have experienced within the home. And they don't have a safe place that they can talk about it, so they bottle it up there. And then when they now blow up or go into some depressive behavior or begin to manifest some behavior, that the parents begin to wonder, what is going on? Why are they behaving like this? All the while they are not mindful of what the children are absorbing or what they have absorbed in the past from the home. So when we bring it to, closer home to, especially for those of us who are of the faith, the question is, how are we handling conflicts in the home? Because the truth of the matter is that for as long as two people are living together, there will be conflicts. There are occasions and opportunities for conflict, but how do we manage it in a way that does not impact the children that we are bringing up or the other significant people that are within our sphere of influence? The Bible tells us in Proverbs 15:1 that a gentle answer turns away wrath. How do we prevent something, a disagreement, from escalating into a breakdown, a complete, turning the home into a war zone? How do we do that? And it is important for us to pay attention to this, especially, for our own mental well-being in the home and for the sake of the children that are growing in that home. My emphasis today is a lot towards homes, creating a healthy environment in our homes that can, facilitate emotional and mental well-being of the people that are in that home? What are the issues that requires redress? Emotional regulation reflects spiritual maturity. If you cannot regulate your emotions, there is a question mark about your spiritual maturity. Because if you should know what the Bible says about anger. The anger of man does not work the righteousness of God. So what is your home reflecting? Is it reflecting the peace of Christ or chaos of self? What are we reflecting in our homes? The peace of Christ or chaos? Unresolved issues that now leads to chaos in the home. Our children are watching. Your children are watching. They're watching how you handle conflicts. They're watching how you handle disappointments. How do you behave when things don't go right? They are watching how we process pain. And I can say this of a truth, my children watched me go through traumatic experiences living with chronic diseases. One thing that my source would tell you is that in the midst and in the thick of our storms with my health in my home, because like I said, it was just not about me. The whole family was impacted by my health. My boys would say, Daddy would say, it is well. It is well. When you go back and forth, it will come back to it is well. And it is well simply means regulating ourselves emotionally by anchoring our faith and trust in God. Yes, what is happening around about us is mind-boggling. It is distracting, disrupting. The disruptions that have come to us, it can shake our world. But at the same time, we must learn to anchor our trust in God and in His word and His promises. And that is how we can regulate our emotions. When things are happening with me, maybe I hear a doctor's report and it is bad enough to flip me emotionally. I have to anchor myself on the truth so that I can regulate my emotions and tell myself what is the truth about me. But what is also happening is that my sons are watching me. They are watching how I'm dealing with all these issues they were watching how I was dealing with all these issues. And now I'm on the other side observing how they are handling challenging these difficulties. And I can have this peace in my heart that, praise be to God, they saw how we did, and we know that they learned from that, and trusting that God will help them with that as well. My dear friends, pain is inevitable. We live in a broken world. Things will happen, life will happen to us. And it will happen at the place where we have the closest and most intimate relationships, in the marriage, in the home. But what we do with our painful experiences, what we do in with our challenging experiences in the home is formative. It affects the children that grow up in that home. We can let our suffering and our painful experiences produce character, because that is what it's meant to do. If you look at Romans 5, it says our suffering produces perseverance, it produces, character, it produces hope. Can we deal with our situation in the way that it will refine our character so that we can model this to our children? Or are we going to deal with the situation in a way that shows the children that it's okay to be reactive, it's okay for us to explode, or it's okay for us to turn our back against God when we go through challenges. I love what 2 Corinthians chapter 1 teaches us. It's one of my, it's actually my anchor. It's an anchor scripture for my life. Blessed be God, the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, who comforts us in all our afflictions with the same comfort with which we'll comfort others. See, when we have received comfort, we know how to give comfort. But the first thing is that we have to learn to receive comfort in whatever our painful challenges are, so that we can exude that comfort into that home. We need to let the peace of God that passeth all human understanding mount a guard around our heart, so that we can, against all anxiety and anxious thoughts, so that we can exude that peace and create an environment of comfort and peace in our home, irrespective, despite the storms that is whirling around about us. The way we live our faith in the home, the way we live our lives in the home, becomes a blueprint for those that are coming after us. Our children are not only absorbing, they are not only observing, they are absorbing. Let me say that again. Our children are not only observing, but they are also absorbing. What are your children? What are the young adults in your home absorbing from your marriage, from your character, from the way we behave? The environment in our homes impacts our mental and emotional well-being. So, how do we recognize that the environment is toxic and unhealthy? Excuse me. How do we recognize an environment that is not healthy for emotional well-being? When we have working on eggshells in the home, when you find yourself working on eggshells in your home, being watchful of what you say, how you say it, when you say it, you need to ask deeper questions about what is going on. When you can feel the constant, emotional tension does come. But we deal with it and it goes. But if it now becomes constant emotional tension within the home, requires us to be watchful. When you find it difficult to even let your guard down or relax in the home, that you have to be always watchful, watching out. Something is not right. That is hypervigilance. When frequent conflicts are left unresolved, it's time for you to seek help and for conflict resolutions. Bring in somebody else who can help you to walk through issues. When you begin to feel emotionally disconnected from significant people in the home, whether you are a male just feeling disconnected from your spouse, your husband, or the female feeling disconnected from the husband, you need to check. If our children are feeling disconnected from their parents, it requires that we pay attention. When children begin to have shifts in their behavior, when they are hypersensitive in specific instances, we need to be observant to know that something is not right. When they are withdrawing, we need to observe and take action about this. So how do we move towards healing the environment in our home so that it can be a place that is conducive for emotional and mental well-being? Identify the problem, seek help. Identify the problem, seek help. Become, aware of what the problem is. Don't bury your head in the sand and just say that it will go, it will go. Identify the problem. Don't stay silent about it and seek help. Where is the aggression coming from? Where is the tension coming from? What is happening in the home that is creating emotional tension, that is creating conflicts? Identify the problem, name that problem, call it what it is. That is the beginning of acceptance. We deal with situation, call it what it is by name. And we can begin to practice repair, learning to say, apologize when you recognize that you are the one in the wrong. A genuine I am sorry, makes so much difference. But that comes from the place of awareness, of maturity, to know that you have acted in the wrong. When you have screamed and shouted in the front of your children, do you go back to calm them down and say, look, I'm sorry I lost it in that moment. I will be careful not to do this again. If you are consistently screaming and shouting and screaming and shouting, which you're telling your children is that is the way to deal with life. And when you now know that this is not, and you now know that it can impact the people in the home, especially the children, then we must take action. Absolutely, it is okay to apologize to our children when we know that we have misbehaved or we have misbehaved in their presence. More importantly, we must establish a rhythm of peace. A family, my mother always says, there's a family that prays together, stays together. When the family can come together, have a conversation, pray about issues together, discuss issues together, you are creating a rhythm of peace that can permeate the entire home and begin to change the atmosphere in that home. You see, we must learn to invite God into the emotional spaces in our lives, especially when we're going through challenges. In this world that we live today, it is the tendency to carry the weight of the world from outside into the home is very high. But if we recognize how that can impact the people in our home, we begin to be mindful of how we are, what we are exuding, what we are transmitting to the significant people in the home. Remember, Jesus said, my peace I give to you. And peace is certainly not the absence of problems. In this world, we will have trials and tribulations, but Jesus said we should be of good cheer. He has overcome the world and he has given us his peace. And so peace is not the absence of problems. It is who is carrying the problems with us. It is the presence of who carries the problems with us. That is Jesus Christ, the presence of Christ in the home. So, my dear friends, as we wrap up our time together this evening, and if you do have questions around this topic that I've been sharing with us today, or you realize that it hits home, please don't hesitate to reach out if you need help to work through some of these issues. My name is Irene Titulala Olumese. I am a faith-informed trauma and transformational coach. I help people to work through their emotional challenges, their painful experiences, and to transform it to power, to purpose, and to profit. I support people to heal from their emotional challenges. Your home does not need to be perfect to be peaceful. Your home does not need to be perfect to be powerful. But when you recognize the power of the environment that you have created in your home on the lives of every member of that household, you will be intentional about the way you show up in your home, in your marriage, and in your relationship. Because the truth of the matter is that every single moment of each day, in very quiet, in ways that we don't see, our children are learning from us and they're absorbing from us. They're absorbing what it feels like to love intentionally. They're absorbing what it looks like to walk in faith. They're absorbing what it looks like to be in a relationship and build a relationship. They're absorbing what it looks like to be a resilient person who is able to ride the waves of life, the storms of life. They're absorbing what it is like to be human in a broken world like this. So, my dear friends, let me ask you this question again. What kind of environment are you creating in your home? Do you know how this environment is impacting the people who are in that home with you, especially the children? And if you have been impacted by the environment in your home when you were young, do you now recognize where it is coming from and what you need to do to deal with it? Seek help. The first step is to recognize that something is not right, that you have emotional residues from the environment you grew up, or you have emotional baggages that you have carried from the environment where you grew up that has impacted you emotionally and mentally, and that it has the power to impact the people that you are now in relationship with. That is the first step. When you're able to recognize them and name it, the next step is to seek help. Seek help to deal with it. Ultimately, we want to hand over godly legacies to our children, not a legacy of broken lives, but a legacy of life that heals beyond brokenness, life that transforms and is lived in the fullness of God's purpose beyond the challenges that we have lived in our lives. So as I close our session tonight, I ask you this question again. What kind of environment are you creating in your home? And do you know the impact of this environment, the emotional residues that has been absorbed in that environment on the mental and emotional well-being of the children that are growing there? And lastly, do you need help to deal with the emotional residues that you have absorbed and the emotional baggages that you may have absorbed from your growing up? The truth of the matter is healing is possible. It is possible for us to heal and to live life in the fullness that is designed, that God designed it to be, if we're willing to walk the journey of emotional healing. If you do need help, please do not hesitate to reach out. We will continue this conversation on the last Tuesday of May, where we talk about beyond the front door. How does the external impact the internal dynamics at home? Remember, home is where our emotions are shaped. If you don't take anything away from here tonight, remember, the home is where our emotions are shaped. Good night and God bless you. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. I look forward to seeing you again the last Tuesday of May. God bless you.